There was an academic conference on the Anthropocene. I was not at this conference, and I don't think any of you were either. In fact, before I read this article about this conference, I didn't even know what the Anthropocene was. Do any of you? Carly?
The human era.
Yes, right, yeah. I think it is the current geologic era that we live in. Geology being the study of the earth, which I also had to look up. So there was a conference on the earth right now with humans on it. And I'm not a scientist. I got a B in high school biology, and that included using the same LEAF project that my sister had used 10 years prior. She was a good student. She was a valedictorian, but even with her LEAF project, I still got a B in high school biology. I'm not a scientist, but I'm able to identify people who are smarter than me and to defer to them. And people who are smarter than me, scientists, geologists, people who study the earth for a living, are in general agreement that the earth is sick, and that the earth is sick because of human activity. And if you're 60 or 70 or 80, you don't have to worry about it. You're gonna be fine. Or even if you're 40 like me, I've had a good run. I've enjoyed it a lot. I'm probably okay. But I think about my kids, or your grandkids, or your great-grandkids, and there are wonders that we have experienced in this beautiful earth that they will not because of what we've done. So there's an academic conference on the Anthropocene, and the general consensus is that the earth is in trouble. And at one point during this conference, there's a time for open discussion. And a young academic stands up and he walks to the microphone. Let me tell you, he says, you being all the people at the conference, maybe all the people in the world, let me tell you, he says, we will not be missed. And everybody at the conference starts laughing. I wasn't at the conference, so I don't know why they were laughing, but sometimes you laugh when you don't know what else to do. Gallows humor. When I was in 9th grade, I took geometry, and the class was mostly all other 9th graders, but there were a couple 10th graders in the class too, and then there was one 11th grader in the class, a big football player. School didn't come easily to him, and he most certainly did not apply himself either. And when the teacher would hand back tests, his test would be covered in red ink. And normally, if you get a paper like this back, you put it into your folder as quickly as possible so that no one else can see it. But when he got his paper back, he would leave it right on his desk and chuckle to himself. And then after class, he would go to his locker and stick his 12 out of 40 to the outside of his locker for everyone to see. And he would be laughing, and we would all be laughing too, because we didn't know what else to do. Shame and intimidation were the primary pedagogical tools at the school I attended. But I think the teachers were even confused by this slow-witted 11th grade football player, because he had outwitted them too. He wasn't embarrassed by it. We all just laughed at it. He laughed at it. But I think we all felt bad for him too. I think deep down in our hearts, we wished that he could get a 25 out of 40 or a 30 out of 40, maybe a good, respectable D. That would have made us all happy for him. And I think that probably at that conference, everybody who was laughing felt bad too. Even people who have the lowest estimations of human beings, oh, we're just animals. I think they can sense that there is something special about us, and that the extinction of the human race would be on another plane of tragedy than the extinction of other species. And I think that they can even sense that we would indeed be missed by someone. But if we weren't here, who would miss us? That's the question. The philosopher Epicurus wondered about death, and he tried to relieve people's anxiety around death. He said that when you're alive, death isn't present. And when you're dead, life isn't present. There's a great gulf between them, so you don't need to worry. And there's a certain amount of sense to that. There is a great gulf between life and death. Personally, it is not my own death that frightens me the most. It is the death of people I love. Because if you die, I have to go on without you. And I don't want to do that. The mortician and poet, Thomas Lynch, is a man of faith. And he says something similar. When he meets with families for funeral planning, he tells them the dead don't care. And he's not saying this in an unfeeling way. He's just pointing out the difference. And for those of us who have to keep on living after loved ones have died, it is hard. And whatever consciousness may be after death, I think Lynch is right to point out that it is probably concerned with matters of greater significance than flower arrangements or hymns or party platters from Kowalski's. That young academic at the conference was trying to be bold and unsentimental, and this is what academics do. But I think saying something like, "We will not be missed," is self-defeating. Because we will be missed, either by some old-fashioned bearded god out there in the clouds, or if not that, just uttering the statement, "we will not be missed," elicits such grief and tragedy and feeling in us that I think it ends up elevating the sacredness of the human being rather than diminishing it. And to elevate the sacredness of the human being is to beg for God talk. So I think everybody can agree, consciously or not, verbally or not, that life is of great importance and that we put a whole lot into life and that it's sacred and that it's precious. So it's a tragedy to imagine not just our own non-existence, but to imagine the non-existence of other people. Think of the splendors of life, the beauty of Bach or a boat ride or a good meal or lovemaking or doing something very bad and being told, "It's okay, I forgive you." Having all that washed away. Or being on the couch in the late afternoon and feeling tired and kicking up your feet just to see how it feels and drifting off into an unplanned nap. Great experiences of human life. And it's funny how easy it is to become detached from these cardinal pleasures. We can get so organized and regimented, just work very hard, follow all the rules, build up your retirement, and that's it. Lock your doors too. Don't forget to lock your doors. And the windows, latch the windows. But follow all these rules, and that's all that will matter to have a good, constructed, wealthy, comfortable life. But if you do this long enough, with enough singular intensity, you will end up being the lord of a planet on the brink of destruction. I'm doing fine. My kids are doing fine. We've got plenty, and so on and so forth, but this isn't working for us. And in the end, this mentality won't work for any of us or all of us. But what if instead we put on the psalmist's eyewear? What if we saw the world the way that the writer of Psalm 8 sees the world? The heavens, the sun, the moon, the galaxies, the mountains, the oceans, the lakes, incomprehensible wonders to marvel over, and then the human being, equal in splendor to these incomprehensible majesties. The human being, to think that the human being is incommensurable, to think that you can never be rated or priced, that you're never a 12 out of 40 or a 30 out of 40 or a 40 out of 40, that every person is as wondrous as the next night's sunset, no matter how much of a mess up you feel like you are or you feel like they are. What are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. It's the great unanswered question of this psalm of human civilization, of religion. Who are we? Who are you? And every response that we would try to offer would be insufficient. It would be like trying to explain to someone what it is like to be in love when in your innermost parts you just know what it's like to be in love. It's hard to know, but we can know. If you focus on someone, if you're patient with someone, at the grocery store, at school, at church, in recovery, lying in bed, if you just sit opposite someone and marvel at who they are, how much there is to you that I do not comprehend, how vast you are, how wonderfully and fearfully made you are. Just to behold another person in their total inimitability and singularity. There has never been someone like you before, and there never will be again. What are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. Who are we? Who are you? These are questions of such vastness. I think that they are a great relief to what we spend most of the rest of our lives worrying about or doing. To think, foremostly, that we are not set upon this earth to be right, or rich, or moral, or good, or long-living, not primarily, but that we are here to behold, to look upon one another, to see one another in the way that God sees you. It lowers the pressure. What are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. I never realized how precious human life was until I became a parent. And this is not being overly sentimental. It's not because I think my kids are particularly good. Average. It's because I comprehend how much goes into life. Creating life, caring for life. Having life is immensely difficult, logistically, financially, spiritually. It takes so much out of you. Pregnancy, appointments, classes, childbirth, nursing, feeding, toilet training, waking up, they get sick, you worry about them, they get older, there are special appointments when things aren't going the way you want, they keep getting older, you see them go away and you're so afraid and you love them. So much goes into every life, even the most neglected, overlooked life, so much goes into every life. And when you think about this, you realize how unspeakably evil war is, or acquiring more is, or closing doors. You are all wonderfully and fearfully made. So much has gone into each and every one of you, and in an instant we can snuff one another out. The last person Jesus ever spoke to in his life was a man on death row. The writer of Luke's gospel does not tell us what crime he committed, but let your imagination fill in the blank. Come up with the worst crime you can think of. Let's imagine that the jury only met for 20 minutes before a verdict was rendered. Guilty. Sentenced to death. No one even bothered to stage an appeal because this was a life that no one would miss. On that we could all agree. So it stands out that at the end of this man's life, he had the audacity to speak to Jesus, to look to Jesus upon the cross. He had the audacity to think that his wretched life, his wretched soul was worth something. He looked to Jesus and he said, Jesus, remember me. And Jesus turned to him, and with all the care and mindfulness of the entire universe, Jesus remembered him.